when people say like, oh, my vote doesn't matter. And, a lot of people, you hear that all the time. Oh, my vote doesn't count. My vote doesn't matter. And I'm sitting here thinking like, if your vote really doesn't matter, then why are they spending so much money trying to get it?
Right. I agree.
Speaking of sloppy, like what's up with the 1,000 bottles of baby oil? What about the 754 that supposedly were found?
Reyes on the humble show. Yeah, we all in. Yeah, we all in. So grab your boys now, cause we all win. Lift your hands up.
Welcome back to the All In Podcast. I'm your host, Carlos Reyes, accompanied by my co-host, the most interesting man in the industry, Zadie. And today we have a very, very special guest, another special guest in the building. In my opinion, one of the funniest dudes on the internet, Mr. Bobby Sauce. What's up, Mr. Bobby?
Glad to be here, sir.
Bro,
Collective sirs.
Appreciate you, man. We've been having, actually, we got right to it even before the show, which tells me it's going to be a good show, and it's worth watching and listening to the people out there. Yeah, man. So I've been following you for a while, bro, and out of the 390 something people I follow, you're definitely one of the funniest.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're definitely one of the funniest, bro. And it's like you actually kind of do your own skits. You know what I mean? Like the names, the creativity behind it. Yes, I saw you when you were watching the debate live with Krusty, aka Mrs. Harris,
the demon.
And I saw that, and you're just sitting there, and you got a chicken, and you got all kinds of other. I was like, this is hilarious. And my wife, because we were at Disneyland, she's like, stop watching that. We're with the kids. And I'm like, I can't. This is just so funny, right?
It's more important.
Yeah, and the way that you just bring comedy and entertainment to the political realm is something that I would say we need more of out there, right? Because like we were having that conversation upstairs, for the most part, right, collectively, politics is very dark and it's very negative and it's hateful, right?
You need people to digest it in a way that's entertaining, or they'll tune it out and they'll be like, you know what, this doesn't involve my life. I'm probably going to be fine, and they tune it out. So it has to be funny and entertaining, or they won't pay attention.
It's like I'll give you an example. For some reason, obviously it's election year. And I'm at actually I took my buddy here, Spencer, I took him out for his birthday to grab a beer over it's called Westgate, over by where the Arizona Cardinals play, the football team. And we're sitting there, and by the way, I had 2 beers, right? And this guy had 1 drink. And every single commercial was just owned and ran by the blue party. Yeah. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's just like commercial after commercial after commercial, the propaganda, right? And every single commercial was just straight, like, it was never about like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the country. It was just bashing and demonizing the other side.
They're spending $5 million more a day.
Well, Bobby, didn't she just like raise like $500 million in like a month or something?
A ton, yeah. And it's funny because they pretend like they're going against the billionaires and they're going to bring a reckoning to the corporate class. Yet like Google and all of the mainstream, all the biggest companies all support her, and support her not only financially, but by altering the way that people engage with their platforms, like Gagal, what can't be named.
Bro, wasn't Oprah at the DNC talking about like,
she's always there?
Yeah, she was at the DNC. Like, here you have a billionaire. Yes, a self-made billionaire. Can't take that away from her. You also have I believe it's the richest woman in America, which was Steve Jobs' widow that owns the Atlantic. Wow. Is fully behind her. If you look at the Atlantic, which is a piece of garbage, they're all for her. So it's like, why are all these billionaires with that camp?
If she's really going against the big guys, right?
Middle class, my ass.
They just appeal to the low information voter. That's their game. It's like say the most obvious base level thing to a person that doesn't know any better, and they get swindled.
And it makes sense though, because people, they're so busy with life, kids, work, friends, hobbies. Who has time to go there and actually read a bill?
Yep.
Actually, none of them
Exactly.
are educated. So I was telling you that I was on Instagram a few nights ago, right? My wife got me this hat, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna go on Instagram and showcase the hat my wife just got me." Right? Apparently, you have to be some kind of donor to the Donnie Ball Game campaign to get one of these hats. That's what my wife told me. She could be wrong, right? That's what she told me because I was like, "Babe, where'd you get that hat?" Right? This is my first MAGA hat that I own, right? And I'm like, I'm going to go on Instagram and just see how everybody's doing. Right. It's just very friendly. Next thing you know, some lady from, her name was Christy. Some lady from Seattle gets on and we just start, we start talking. And by the way, I'm always very graceful and respectful. Like if you ever see me debate, cause I always challenge people like, hey, let's have a debate. Let's get on. Right. So I was being very graceful, very respectful. And I'll tell you what I noticed immediately. She wasn't very educated about policy. I actually asked her, I said, can you name me one policy that you really appreciate about what your presidential candidate is putting together? And she was like, she's like, I'm just going to be honest with you. I just don't like Donald Trump. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, I go, aha, right? Like, there it is, right? And I feel like, that's happening. I feel like a lot of people right now are being programmed to vote because they hate or dislike the other person. Is that the propaganda that's kind of being put out there right now?
Yeah. I mean, less than, I think it's about 60% of the country of eligible voters cast a vote at all, which is insane. And if you think about the actual population paying attention to political content on a given day, it's probably less than 10% of the country pays attention.
Out of 330 million people that are here in this country.
Regularly.
Yeah.
So it's like when it comes time for them to cast their vote, which obviously a good percentage of them are, let's say it's 50% or 60%, whatever, they have to make a decision. So they're just going to get whatever seems
They're like,
right
yeah, well, you're right.
What are you voting for, honey? Let's do the same thing.
Yeah, they're not really taking the time to
Yes.
read into a policy, right?
It takes time.
They're just listening and watching whatever commercials is on there. He's like, you know what? I kind of like the here, and I'm just going to go vote there.
That's why they say whoever has more money wins, because you're programming more people with commercials. So it doesn't matter if what you're saying is true or not. But if you're on TV saying my opponent is evil, I'm not, I'm for you, whether it's true or not, it's programming. No one does research. And then when it's time to make a decision, they're just like, well, they said this on the TV, so I'm just going to vote for them.
Yeah, full transparency, by the way. I'm a Mexican that was born in Mexico, migrated here illegally, right?
Yep.
And then worked my butt off, paid my dues. Eventually, like 15 years later, I became a citizen of the country, right? Back in the day, I grew up a Democrat. Like I grew up a Democrat. I thought that they were for the people, like welfare, food stamps, WIC assistance, oh, we really support the little guy. That's what we were programmed to think when I was growing up. You know what I mean? Oh, and side note, by the way, the way that things were done back then, whether you were a legal immigrant or an illegal immigrant just trying to come here and chase the American dream, nobody was giving you a prepaid visa or paying for your airplane tickets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what's going on these days, which is absolutely outrageous. So that's a spit in the face to someone like me who actually had to struggle to be here and to stay here and to earn my position here, my spot here. You know what I mean? It's a spit in the face. But anyway, that's a whole different conversation for another day.
Yeah, but it's like I was saying offline before, is that, we live in kind of like, you have to live in a trust society to some degree, where you have to trust that other people that paid more attention will give you the true story of something. So like, it's kind of like if you ask a friend what restaurant to go to, doesn't matter how many Google reviews or Zagat reviews you read, you'll go to the restaurant that your friend recommends. So it's like, they make these talking points very easy to transfer to other people. They make it easy to talk about and communicate about. Isn't he an a-hole? Doesn't he hate black people? Doesn't he hate this? Isn't he mean? And everybody talks about that. They all unanimously agree because it's going around their social circles. So it's easy to get people to move as a tribe, move as one to make a decision. And then whatever aligns with that, you watch it on TV, you see your favorite celebrities say the same thing. Yeah. And you're like, well, they must know. they're
Yeah.
rich or they pay attention or, that guy's pretty smart. So I'll just do what he says. And that's why when you confront a person and say, did you actually look at this? They're like, look, I don't really know. I just hate him.
It always turns out that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't the diddler endorse Krusty, aka Miss Harris?
That's so funny. Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that because this is a topical thing, which is great. So they've been posting, the left is really genius about this. They're really good at branding and marketing.
Mhm.
And they've been posting pictures of Diddy with Trump. And they're like, oh, look, Diddy, and now Trump is going to be next because he hung out with them at some parties. And it's like, this guy has hung out with Obama and every political operative on the left. He did a voting campaign in 2020 for Hillary. He endorsed Joe Biden in 2020. So he's like way more integrated with the left than he is on the right
for decades.
Yes, for a very long time. And they're so damn good, that they are always a step ahead. As soon as it came out, they like found a picture of him and Trump, and they're like, he's with Trump.
Well, what they do is
just like the Epstein deal.
Yes, it's a projection, right? So it's like what you are internally, you say the other person is, and then now they can't use that against you because it's like, no, I already said you're that. You can't call me a racist. I called you a racist.
Exactly.
So it's like they're quick to the punch. They say it fast, and then they manipulate people with emotions and empathy.
Mm-hmm.
By talking like this, and I couldn't believe he did that. How dare he take our rights away when they're the ones doing it.
The other thing is, like, I've mentioned this in a video before, is like, if you were on the school, in the schoolyard as a kid, and somebody called you, and everybody calls a person a specific name, you make fun of them with this one name. It's when it bothers them that you keep saying it. When it really pisses them off, you get a rise out of them. The way to get that person to stop saying mean things to you is to act like it doesn't bother you, or to start calling yourself that. And then it loses all of its edge, right?
Yeah.
So they take things like Let's Go Brandon, which was probably the most genius branding from the right. And they're like, oh, he's dark Brandon now. And they brand a negative as a positive so that it loses all of its bite on the right. That's how they're so good at branding. They'll take a thing that's negative and turn it around, and they all chime in unison and take the edge off. The right is not as good at doing that because we're not as tribally united, where it's like whatever one team says, we all run with it all the time.
We're kind of free thinkers.
Exactly.
Right?
We're
Yeah.
not
Counts
hive
against us.
mentality.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
By the way, you're so right, dude. Now let me ask you something. I mean, we were talking about the diddler and that whole endorsement, and we were talking about Oprah. Doesn't Hollywood generally organically lean left anyway, like for a very long time?
For sure.
Right?
I would say certainly.
Like 80, 90% most of the time? Right?
Well, I mean, not to get too historical about it, but like, think about how much television, movies, and the media in general influences the behavior and thought processes of people. It's been used all throughout history to convince people that something is okay, or that this type of relationship or whatever is okay. So it moves the culture. It's downstream from the media, and they understand that. That's why, like, the 3-letter agencies, which won't be named, use things like Hollywood to propagandize like going to war, for example. So it's like if they were able to propagandize that going to war is righteous and good, then they're just doing the exact same thing now. So if you were a person that was trying to control the minds of people, where would you go? I need to be in every television set. I need to be in every radio station. I need to be in every movie theater.
Social media.
So they just buy all those assets up, or at the very least, they make sure that they have control over them by giving them the ability to do things that other people can't. Like, for example, in 2020, when everything was locked down in California, one of the most restrictive states, you know who could still work? The movie production houses. Hollywood was still able to operate and film and do all of these things while your local barbershop was not able to be open.
Bro, the local church wasn't able to congregate.
Exactly.
That's wild, by the way. Did you see, by the way, the whole skit of she's being highly criticized for it, when that little tiny minute clip of Harris on Oprah recently, of course, right? On Oprah, where she's like, as Americans, like where she tossed out the word salad, like, how she normally does the word salad. And it's just like, it goes around and round and round. And then people are just like, oh, okay. Right. Did you see that whole skit that's going around the internet?
Well, I watched her whole segment with Oprah, and it was an infomercial, basically. Jeez, I love that people have been calling it that, because that really is what it was. And it's like, that was not an interview.
That's right.
An interview is a person that is a in theory a bipartisan or a non-opinionated person that's trying to do journalism.
That's
But
right.
that's not what she was doing. They
Yeah.
weren't asking for follow-ups. If she
Mhm.
says something that's nonsensical, they're like, okay, and then they go to the next question. So
They assist her.
exactly, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what the press does. And it's like, you don't have to like the right. If you're an intelligent person, a rational and reasonable person, you don't have to like right-wing politics or right-wing viewpoints to look at that and say they're doing her a favor. They're not challenging her on anything. If you watch how they interview like JD Vance, for example, versus her, it's not even comparable. So you don't have to like the right, but will you at least acknowledge that they're giving them
They're
these things?
biased.
And
They're biased.
exactly.
Right.
It's so obvious. And that's the thing that bothers me, is that like the left, generally speaking, will go against what anybody would consider to be like objective reality.
Mm.
It's like, I get it that you like their policies, but don't tell me that that's blue and it's red. It's like,
Yeah.
we all see it. So now if you're willing to lie to me about something that's so blatantly obvious, then
Wow.
what wouldn't you lie about?
Mm.
I would
Wow.
believe that you would lie about everything.
Wow.
Let me
Well
ask
said.
you. I got a lot of questions, by the way. Here, let's just.
Well said.
I got so many. I got cards full of questions for you, Bobby. Talk to us about your upbringing.
Okay.
You have you been out in Fort Lauderdale for a while?
No, so I was born and raised in Connecticut, 2 loving parents, brother, beautiful American family. I had a great childhood. I have no complaints at all. My parents are still together. They just had their 42nd wedding anniversary. You know, I grew up sledding in the backyard, riding bikes in the street. I had as great of an upbringing
What
as
a
I
great
can.
childhood.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
And you know, my schooling in Connecticut was great. I had great friends. I lived in a relatively small town. And it was a great upbringing. And my
Good
parents,
family atmosphere.
yeah, like my parents don't really drink. Like
Yeah.
they didn't hit me. They didn't do any, like there was no crazy salacious details. It was just a really beautiful experience. And, you know, we didn't grow up rich. We didn't grow up poor, middle class. My dad made pretty good money, was a salesman, and they taught me how to be a good person.
Mm.
And the thing that always brings me, like we were talking before about politics, it's like, why do you pay attention to this thing that's so inherently dark and negative?
Mhm.
And it's like, if I had such a great life, if I've been given all these blessings,
Mhm.
for me to just be like, well, I'm good.
Mhm.
Like, who cares about the guy that lives on the street in Philadelphia? It's not my problem. I'll probably be fine. If the price of gas goes up $1 or $2 a gallon, I'll be fine. I know how to make money. I have resources. I have a family. I'll be good. People love me. I love them. I'll be all right. But it's like, if I have all these blessings and I just completely ignore all the people that don't, and don't at the very least try to be an armchair warrior, a voice warrior,
Mhm.
then it's like, it's almost like an injustice
Mm.
to all of the gifts that the universe,
Wow.
God has
Wow.
given
so you
me and my
you
family.
feel a sense of purpose and responsibility,
Tremendous.
and that's why you actually started speaking out
Yes.
against things that you just didn't agree upon.
Mhm.
Right?
I could-
When did that begin?
Well, like I think that I always kind of grew up. I think if you believe that you're destined for great things, you're always like, I could be the greatest to ever do it if I stay focused and I do it. And if I grew up with all of these benefits,
Yeah.
how could I not? If a person that illegally immigrated over the border that's created great success, if they could do it, why wouldn't I be able to do it?
Yeah.
So I always felt like I could do something great, but I didn't know what it would be. I always thought it would be in business. But when I had a video go viral seemingly out of nowhere, I was like, could I actually be a thought leader, or at the very least, influence the thoughts of people to move in a direction that I believe is virtuous and good? And that was kind of how the world and the universe, God, whatever, kind of like glided me in that direction on its own.
Mm. When do you think, like, what year do you think that this really started to take place for you?
2008.
2008?
2008. Yes.
That's when Obama actually got in office.
Yeah. So it actually started slightly before that. I started getting into conspiracy theories.
You didn't buy the Obama juice in 08? Because I did.
I did. I voted for Obama.
I bought the Obama juice.
So did I.
I was like, man, this guy, he speaks good. He looks good. He's, he plays sports, right? Like, I was like, this is the dude. Like, this is the next generation, the next level, right into the, I was just all about him.
Yeah.
I was like, and then that wore out very fast.
Yeah. So the first election I was old enough to vote in was 2008, and I voted for Obama. And I didn't consider myself to be a very political person, but I saw I saw people that I knew graduate college, not have jobs. I saw the stock market tank. I saw money become tight. And I'm like, wait, my generation kind of just got screwed. Why? And then I see Obama and it's like, oh, hope, change. Maybe it's because of the Bush family has run the whole world. And like, maybe it's all these bad people.
Yep.
So he'll save us. And when he got in and I started seeing that not happening, I started going into the conspiracy theories, like trying to question my own understanding of what it was. And that's when it kind of started leading me to Alex Jones, to ultimately Ron Paul. And like, once you take the pill, like once you take the red pill, once you take it, you're like, wait a second, everything's a lie now. Food is a lie and banking is a lie and
even
world
some
history.
of our history. Exactly. Yes.
So then it's like, once you go in, it's like, if you consider yourself to be a free thinker, an independent person that has to forge their own path, because like I dropped out of college, I knew that I would have to figure out how I was going to get to where I wanted to get. So it's like, when you drop out of college, you realize that the only person that's going to create this success now is me. I can't rely on this degree or what my professor teaches me. I have to figure it all out. So as I'm figuring out money, career, job, life, whatever, I realized that politics had a huge influence over it, whether I liked it or not. And I needed to understand politics in order to be successful ultimately, because it's how markets move, it's how money moves. And once you go like under the curtain and realize that they've been lying to us all along, it's just like, am I going to just be an ostrich and bury my head in the sand now that I've seen the light? Or am I just going to keep going? And because I'm an independent person, I'm an entrepreneur, I didn't have to go to work and deal with somebody saying you can't think that way, you can't say that. And I've kind of followed that path my whole life.
Bobby, where do you do your research? Like how, when you hear about a topic or whatnot and you dive in, because obviously you don't just go on what the news says.
That's a great question.
You dive in. What do you base your research on? Do you take both sides? Do you go on, like, what do you do?
Let me add to that, because this is a great question, right? Because I think our watchers and listeners, we got a lot of business owners, and business owners, organically by default in many cases they swing a little more conservative and right. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, whether you swing left politically or you swing right, they don't know where to go to get nonpartisan, right, neutral resources, because you either got Fox or CNN. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right. So what are some good resources for folks to get out there and do their own research?
So before I go specifically on that, I'll say that I actually kind of take the opposite approach of what I think I've heard a lot of people say, which is that I actually follow a lot of Democrat accounts on social media, and I follow a lot of Democratic, I guess you could call them intellectuals. I think that's an oxymoron, but whatever.
Give me some names.
No,
I promote them.
I don't even want to say them.
Like,
I follow a lot of people that are Democratic, that are left leaning. I follow a lot of left leaning or Democratic influencer types.
Know thy enemy.
And I look at what their argument is, and then I try to shoot holes in it, the same way that I would look at an argument from the right, try to shoot holes in it. And I kept looking at what the left was saying and then do my research to try to find, is that in fact true? And then you come to find out 10 articles down the list that actually isn't true, that there's more nuance to that bill, that the right is just not good as explaining. So I use a lot of different news sites. Like I go to Epoch Times, I look at Breitbart, I look at Drudge, which is very left. I look at MSNBC, CNN, The Guardian, Daily Mail. I follow a lot of different accounts on both sides of the aisle to see what's their respective talking point. I've looked at Breitbart, and I don't get it from one specific source, because I don't believe that anybody is purely nonpartisan. Like even on the right, like I used to look at the Gateway Pundit a lot, and then it's like Gateway Pundit, not to come down on them, but it's like Trump is God to the Gateway Pundit, not to whatever. And you're like, wait, this is actually not the case, especially on matters of like economics. It's like, if Trump says this, it's true. So I started to just listen to a lot of economic podcasts and do research about the breadth of all of it. I don't I know a lot of people will go to Breitbart, see the article, talk about that article. I'll look for the opposing viewpoint and then see where I sit, because I don't
make your own.
Yeah. And I don't always
conclusion.
agree with either one, but I do find that I generally end up on the right, 9 times out of 10.
And it's funny you say that, because one of the worst things that we can do on the internet, especially with people that are following us, is have to put our foot in our mouth, right?
Yeah.
Have you had to put your foot in your mouth in the last couple years?
I think not many times, because I try not to talk about things that I don't know with a lot of depth. Like I really try not to talk about things that are not verified. I will say this, at the very, very beginning, I made a grave mistake, which I think all social media creators make, which is that like, if people chirp at you enough, you think you said something wrong, even though you believe that it may have been right. And because they're mad at like how you said it, or the style that you said it, or the language that you used to say that point. And there was a point at the very beginning where I like apologized for pissing people off that were following me, because I was like, oh, I didn't realize that you guys would interpret it this way. And I remember somebody messaging me and being like, you never apologize. You say what you think is the thing. And it doesn't matter how many people chirp you. If that's what it is and you believe that, don't let the negative comments come at you. And I felt that the most when I started saying that I thought that DeSantis was a good candidate. It's like, he is a good candidate. I can still like Donnie and like him and think that he's good, but I'm not going to ever apologize because of negative feedback. If I am genuinely wrong, for sure. I'm not a psycho. But I'm not going to let the noise convince me that something that I believe to be true, that I researched, that I put my face on, it's not something that I'm willing to stand behind.
Can you give an actual example of a situation like that where you said something, you got heat for it, you're right about what you're saying, and maybe the old you would have backed off, but now because you've learned that, you stay true to what your thought was?
Well, the first part of it, there was during all the lockdown stuff, I was very keyed in on Australia, because Australia was like a very, very insane place. You couldn't move from place to place. You couldn't, like, their politicians were getting absolutely insane. They were the ones that sent people to the camps. They called them hotels, but they were camps. So I started going real hard at Australia, and I was like, everybody's seeing what's happening here. This is a major location, and they're doing like the worst of the worst. And a bunch of people from Australia, leftists from Australia, started chirping back at me, and I made what I would consider to be probably one of my mistakes, is that I kind of like, it's almost like when you're the villain, sometimes you lean into being the villain and you say a thing that you know will piss them off because it will piss them off. You believe it, but you just like lean into it and you start going extra hard because you know that they'll freak out. And I started going really hard at Australia, and then hard at the creators that were criticizing me from Australia. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. I thought what I was saying was correct. But people started messaging me and they're like, dude, you're like arguing with this obscure guy in Australia about this one thing, and it's funny, but like you're missing all the other things that are happening here. And I was like, I need to focus, and I need to not be distracted because there's the sun's shining and there's hay to be made over there. So that was kind of a mistake that I thought that I made, where people were watching my content expecting something that was hard hitting and thoughtful, and instead I was just like giving my response to some idiot in Australia that was saying like the dumbest things imaginable. And it was funny, but it detracted from, if somebody like an Andy Frisella follows me and I'm over here bullshitting with some guy in Australia, is Andy going to get value from that? No. If I put out one of my high quality, and not just him, you understand what I'm saying? It's like, you don't need to see that. I'm not giving you any value. I'm just like playing to my base. And you're not
poking the bear. It's
right? Not changing anyone's mind.
You mean like if they say something, you're talking about a response back, and then you get into that kind of conversation?
Yeah, like one guy was like, he's like, oh, you call yourself a comedian? You're not a real comedian. Like, I've never seen you at any comedy clubs. What do you play? I'm a real comedian. And I was like, oh, you're a real comedian? I'm like, and I just started going at the guy, like, what's a comedian? So it was just like, you get stuck in the weeds. And it's like, it's almost like, I'm really thankful that I'm older, that this attention came to my content.
That's right.
Because I think a young man version of me, a 20-year-old version of me, would have really like leaned in and ripped that. Like if I was 22, I might have said some dumb shit.
Yeah, I'm 40, and I probably would have told the guy, I go, you're from a nation of criminals, bro. Like, what are you talking about? You're all felons.
You had to back off for the last 30, but your stuff is disgusting. Like, your content's not funny.
Yeah. I was talking to him about it because it's like, no, I go on what you're saying, where I know what I'm saying is truth. But I know it's annoying. Like, how annoying is it if you're a Democrat and someone's telling you like, hey, your party is the party of pro-slavery, which is a fact. but then we've all been convinced that the party switched. But like, kind of like we were saying, like you dive in, you hear the party switched, and then you dive into the research and you find out it didn't really switch. Like no one was sitting there on the left side of the aisle, got up and then went to the right side. You know, like that never happened.
By the way,
we're all convinced
you know about that historical factor, right?
Yes.
Can you give us a little insight on how that went down? Because I'll tell you, brother, if you watch this documentary series called The Kennedys, I think it's on Netflix, and it was put out by CNN, by the way, right? But it broke down like so much that happened in the 60s. In my opinion, the 60s was a huge turning point for America. The 60s, you know, supposedly we were on the moon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, now that I think about it, it's like, no, I don't think we were, right? There was a shadow and, you know, right? Like, what's going on here? Did we have that technology back then? I'd just be filming the dude just walking on the moon,
Stanley
right? I don't
Kubrick.
know. I guess that's between the government and
Stanley Kubrick.
what's the dude, the famous astronaut?
Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong.
Buzz
and-
Aldrin.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, back to what I was saying. Give me 1 second. Let me get him. You
answer.
distracted me.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say about what you were just talking about before is like it's kind of like, what is the purpose? What am I trying to accomplish, right? And I always try to refocus back on that.
Education.
Like sure, yes, thinking differently, but like here's an example. You know, like I criticize Trump sometimes because I think some of the things that he does I don't like, but
As
that's
you
okay.
should.
But the point is like, okay, if you're Trump and you post something on True Social, I hate Taylor Swift, right? Your base thinks that's funny, it's hilarious, whatever. It doesn't serve any purpose.
You shouldn't do that.
It doesn't benefit
Yeah.
you. So
Right.
even though what you may say or want to say is maybe right, maybe correct, you're fighting back like you would in any normal social situation. Does it advance your cause forward? Is it purpose driven? And that's where I think there's like there's a selection of what you can choose to say at any given moment. And it's like if you cloud all of the good stuff with kind of that mid-tier stuff, you may as well be mid-tier all the time.
Yeah.
And I try to stay away from things that are not going to really serve the true nature and purpose of it. Like beefing with some dude in Australia, like making fun of Megyn Kelly or Rosie O'Donnell. It's not going to move anybody. It's just going to play to the audience that already loves you. And I think it distracts from the true purpose. And the more that myself and anybody stays focused on the overall mission, you start to not pay attention or talk about those things.
Let me ask you this, in your opinion, right? I mean, not entirely, but what is part of your mission?
I think that my mission is to take complicated topics and make them digestible and entertaining enough that the average person is willing to pay attention to them and look into them more themselves.
Yeah.
My objective is to be a middleman / conduit for what I believe to be the truth and the right view of something, and make it palatable to somebody that doesn't know any better or wants to know but doesn't know how to get there.
Or thinks the opposite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And them too.
I think you're really good at that, where a lot of us, I don't want to say struggle, but like maybe we don't care or that's not our mission. Well, I feel like I feel like it's very honorable to actually come at it from that point of view of saying, hey, look, I'm going to speak this, but I'm going to say it in a way where you could digest it and not just say it in a way to trigger you and gaslight you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Well, I'll tell you what I see immediately from like your content is the way that you express your opinion or ideology or your perspective on things. You, by adding that comical factor to it, somebody doesn't immediately put a wall up. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Right. They're like first it might be like, oh my God, what is he about? And they're like, wow, that is actually kind of funny. And then they start to actually, right. Now your 1 minute video, they're like, they watch the 1 minute video instead of shutting you down the first 5-10 seconds. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I said it when my videos first started going viral. I said on an interview with Epoch Times, I was like, comedy is the Trojan horse for the truth. And it's like, if I can get you kind of loose and entertained without just hitting you with some statistic, I can kind of ease you into something that you may not have been willing to accept had I just come in hard right from the jump. And I think that a lot of political content is very dry and negative. And I think that the right does a very bad job at making it easy to digest. And it's like, that's why the left is so good, is that they boil it down to the most simple digestible piece, and then they give it to you so that you can say it to other people. It happens to be wrong, I think, and messed up, but they're very good at doing that. On the right, I don't see that, where I'll see like, it'll be like the Republicans rejected this bill. The bill is called, give everyone $1 million bill. How could they reject that? That's insane. And then you read the bill and you're like, why is no Republican congressperson making a video explaining why they voted this bill down? Right. Why is nobody taking a 100-page bill and digesting it to the reason why they didn't do it and then making it palatable for the everyday person? Because the left does that, and that's why they name it the Give Everyone $1 Million bill, the Save Every Woman, Believe Every Woman bill, whatever. They make it easy for you to digest and share so that a low information voter can feel good about it. Whereas the right will just reject it and not tell you why, even though they're rejecting it for, I think, what is the correct and just reason. So, they don't explain why. Therefore, it's all lost. And they just do a really bad job of that. So I try to be some type of a middleman conduit to take these very complicated topics and make them easy to understand for your average person.
Generally speaking, the left is where the artists are, the creativity, the art. That's why I think it's like that, where the right, they're more like, pencil pushers, like suit tie, kind of conservative, not really going to do that. Not really. I don't think their brain is able to do that. Of course, like you got guys like Matt Walsh, where it's kind of like, they're breaking the stereotype, right? Because he's very artistic. I mean, especially with the last movie that he put out, which I think is hilarious, but it's really ruffling feathers. I feel like he's like the right-wing version of Michael Moore. He does the same thing Michael Moore's old movies. And like no right-wing person is doing what you're saying, which is like put attention to that. Like, hey, Michael Moore did this on the left. This is just the right-wing version of that. No one's paying that connection.
Well, this is the thing, is that it's kind of like in business. There's a really great lesson in business and entrepreneurship. When you first start building a business, you're like, I have the best product. This is the best. You should just realize it's the best. Because it is. Because I put my whole heart and soul into it. It's the best product there is. But if I can't market that product to you, nobody's going to buy it. And I think that the right and the Republican Party, whatever, is like, they know they got the right product, but they don't do a good job at marketing it. They don't do a good job at explaining what it is. So what any seasoned entrepreneur like yourself would say is like, I don't care that you have the best product. If you can't convince people why, if you can't tell them why it's the best in a very compelling way, you could have the best product, because the best product doesn't always sell the most. In fact, it usually doesn't. It's the best marketed product that does.
Well, and I believe that a big part of that reasoning is because here, I'll give you an example, right? As a logical free thinker, we just think that everybody else thinks this way already.
Yeah.
Like, how can they not, right? Something as logical as like Target, right? I was shopping at Target a few months ago. I haven't seen this as of late, but I was at Target. I took my 12-year-old with me. We were getting some dog food. And next thing you know, in the kids section, they moved up all the homosexual clothing line for kids. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And to me, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Like, right. To me, I'm like, how do they not see that this is probably not a healthy thing to do? Even just in the consumer business world. Right. But I believe that the right and Republicans, right, and logical free thinkers, we automatically just assume that everybody thinks this way and should know better.
Yep.
Right. It's like, hey, you should probably know, especially I'm a father of 2 girls. Hey, you should probably know better than to allow a man that identifies as a woman to go into the little girl's restroom. Right. We think that logically someone should understand that, but for some reason they don't.
Right.
Right.
It's like men and women's sports. It's like, to
that's
us,
crazy.
It seems so obvious. Like, how could you possibly believe this to be true? And it's like, their argument is always emotional based.
Yeah.
You're taking opportunities away from these people that are so brave. And it's like, yeah, but what about the women? What about the women that are competing? And it's like, you have to take this, which would seem to be an obvious point, that you're like, why do I even need to argue this? Like, this is so preposterous that I even need to. But that's really the nature of the game now. It's like, if you could convince somebody that a man that is now a woman should be able to compete and win an award, an NCAA medal or something, over a woman because of all of these biological advantages, it seems so obvious. But despite how obvious it is, even though you got the best product, if you can't explain why that is, even though you think you shouldn't have to, they'll keep getting away with it.
Well, the swimmer, Leah Thomas.
Yes.
Right? Leah Thomas, when he or they, them, was swimming as a man,
Yeah.
he was ranked like 400 and something in the world, right?
Yes.
Then he came over to the women's side, and then he was ranked like top 3 or top 10.
Yeah.
Right? Like, dude, you should know, hello, 400 and something over here, top 10 over here, right? Like, dude, that's not even fair. And you should know that. But once you bring the emotional factor and the empathy or sympathy factor,
Right.
then that's when
Manipulation.
things get a little grainy, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like for your business, it's like, I got the best remodeled house at the best price in the best neighborhood. You don't want to buy it? Why? Are you dumb? Like, how do you not see this?
Yeah.
But that's the problem, is that argument is what has been coming from the general right wing all along. It's like, how do you not see this? This, like, you must be too dumb to understand this.
But what about, like, I remember seeing an interview with Serena Williams, who might be like one of the greatest athletes of
By the
all
way,
time.
she's a woman.
Not even,
Yes.
but that's the thing. But she's one of the
Real
greatest.
woman.
She's a
She's
real
one of the
woman,
greatest athletes of all time. I don't even want to
Yes.
say woman athlete.
Correct.
But she's sitting there in an interview saying, and they're like, oh, you think you could take on the men? And they're like trying to make her say women's rights. You know, you could do it. And she's like, man, I'd get creamed.
Mhm.
I would get creamed. I wouldn't even score a point. And this is one of the greatest athletes of all time saying this.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why there's even a debate after that. You and I are not Serena Williams, right?
Mhm.
This woman is telling us something from her professional experience, and we aren't listening.
Here,
That-
let's
that's
talk
weird.
about
Yeah.
let's talk about some of the lack of logic that has happened as of late, right? So back to my little IG live situation that I had with this Democratic lady from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, she got to you, huh?
No, she didn't. But you know what? It's like you know how you do your research on both sides.
Yeah.
I asked her. I said, "Hey, what did you think about the attempt that went down in Pennsylvania?"
Yep.
She said, "Staged, 100% staged." I was like, "Wait a minute." I was like, "So do you think that the campaign party came up to a billionaire and said, 'Hey, we have a great idea.
Yeah.
We're going to get a 20-year-old kid to take a shot at you from a roof about 200 and something feet away, or whatever it was, yards away, right? It's right here. It's going to barely miss you. And, does that sound like a good idea to you? But you know what? This is going to give you a lot of leverage and a lot of brownie points in America. And you think that this billionaire presidential candidate just said, you know what? That sounds like a winner. Let's run that play. That's what I explained to her. I was like, do you really think that he would agree to this? And she was like, absolutely. Have you not seen his history?
Yeah.
So something like that. And then I'm like, well, I said, respectfully, right, Christy, somebody actually passed away at that, no, that they debunked that. That was all false. The firefighter didn't really pass away, at that rally. I was like, no,
she really said
the
that.
daughter was all over the place, talking about her dad and how much of a hero he was. And like, come on.
Yeah.
Something like that. Did you know that the left thinks that might have been staged?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I saw a Twitter post a couple of days ago where it said it was like Corey Comparatore is the person that died, or he's the one that really lost his life. I'm butchering the way that she wrote it, but it was like Trump just used it as a photo op.
That's crazy.
And it's like you're a demon. Like, you're a demon person because it's like this is the thing, is that they will take us saying that, using lawfare to tie Trump up in court. And it's like, oh, the courts are corrupt. It's clear and obvious. They'll use that exact same argument for something like that seems so obvious. How could you possibly fake that? And they like take our own logic and throw it against us with a much stupider point, for lack of a better way of phrasing it.
Well, let's take another illogical factor that went down over the past several years. Did Joey B really clock in 81 million votes?
Well, I will say this about that. if you want to get flagged, that's a great way to do it. But here's the thing. I think
well, I'm trying to avoid
No,
it. I mean, you see, I said Joey B.
Yeah. No,
Right?
no. But I'll be honest with you. I think that subject is no longer valuable to us, and I think that it only takes away from what we have yet to prove.
Yeah.
What I will say is this: have any of the laws that may or may not have allowed these things to happen, have any of those laws been changed? Not really.
No.
Right?
No.
Have any of those laws been changed? Have any of those machines been changed? Not really. Okay. Now let's take all of the fraud, potential fraud, alleged fraud. Let's take all that out. If you want, this is why language is so important. Think about the word rigged. Okay, what does rigged exactly mean?
Right.
Well, if you have every radio station, every television
right.
station, every magazine, every book, every daytime TV show, every celebrity, all these other people constantly lying to you about things that are objectively true or manipulating the public's belief, isn't that rigging it? If you have
social conditioning.
if you have the dictator of Ukraine in Philadelphia saying that Trump is bad and Biden is good and I'm here to pick up some more cash, which is what just happened a couple of days ago.
He just came down for more cash?
Yes, he was in Pennsylvania,
which is crazy. Yeah.
Wow, 2 days ago, and the governor of Pennsylvania was signing missiles that were shipped, that they're manufacturing.
I saw that.
Yeah, and it's like, is that not election interference? Like, you're bringing this guy over and saying that the one candidate is bad. Like, you're literally using the guy that you're paying to campaign on behalf of the sitting administration.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like and then the news obviously will cover it favorably. So it's like, that's the rigging, that's the manipulation. That's where they really got everything in the bag. So aside from the machines and all the rest, like, that is so obvious.
Or
And
suppressing stories.
Yeah, and like what Google and Facebook did, like moving different stories to different places and suppressing certain types of content versus other. That's the rigging. That's the objective rigging.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say that all these other things happen, machines and whatnot, which I certainly believe there's some screwing around going there. That stuff is objectively true, that I believe anybody could, at the very least, should have the integrity to admit is happening.
Yeah. And I think what people need to understand also, that when you're being a logical, free thinking human being and you truly care about the health and the future of this country, because this country means a lot to a lot of people, right? If you think about it, there's a reason why everybody's trying to come here, right? And nobody's trying to leave.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
People are migrating in, not migrating out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We don't have any American refugees leaving the country, right? And they're going to Puerto Rico or Venezuela.
Well, for tax purposes, maybe.
Maybe,
Dubai,
yeah.
Well, Puerto Rico's
Rico,
America.
Yeah. True.
Right. But they're, if you think about it, they are pretty far away from all the, the stuff that's going on, the circus that's being ran right now, right?
Yes.
Let me tell you this. At some point, you begin to understand that not everybody on the right is truly who they say they are either.
Yeah.
Right. I think people call them rhinos, and you've had a couple different names for them. Right. It turns out, like, I'll give you an example. Right. I believe that the Bushes, they are very good friends with the Clintons, and they're very good friends with the Obamas, and they're very good friends with the Pelosi's. You see what I'm saying? Right. Sure. And what was the other guy, the guy that used to be the House Speaker with the glasses? What was his name? He recently had like some kind of attack, and he just froze up.
Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, right. Like, I mean,
Senate Majority Leader. Yeah.
These dudes, by the way, some of the people that I mentioned, they've been in politics. They've been in the government for decades.
The whole life. Yeah.
For decades, right?
Yes.
Shouldn't we at some point realize and make some changes to the terms and how long you can be there? And right, I'll give you another example. How does a public civil servant go from being worth, net worth of $250,000 to $100 million, over a couple of years? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that stuff, like, if you add 1 + 1, you're like, dude, this is crazy. What's your perspective on some of that stuff?
Well, I mean, people always talk about politics, the right and the left being two wings of the same bird. And like, if you're a reasonable person, an honest person, you're willing to say that, like, Lindsey Graham, for example, is a horrible Republican, warmonger, Ukraine, like, loves Ukraine, goes over there, shakes his hand. Like, there's a lot of bad actors on the right. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And there's a lot, and I think in a lot of ways, they all serve for the most part, the same masters. And they all, generally speaking, for the most part, do lots of very, very bad things. There just happens to be slightly less bad things on the right. And like somebody like Thomas Massie, for example, who I find to be the most honest member of Congress that there is. It's like people like Thomas Massie give me hope. And he's a person that's on the right. People like Rand Paul, for example. These are people that are telling the truth, and I agree with 99 times out of 100.
But they're not very popular.
Right. Well, they don't want them to be popular, and they find some angle to make them seem less less honest or less of a team player. Like for example, Thomas Massie supported Ron DeSantis in the primary, and there was a time where Trump said that Massie should be kicked out of the Republican Party. And it's like, so then it's like, if Trump says that this is a thing, everybody turns on him. And it's like, this has been the most consistent, honest guy that there is
For a while.
And he gives me hope that, if that's the party that he's in, and I agree with him more often than not, him and a handful of other people.
What about RFK?
Yeah. And like, he's good.
RFK just jumped over.
Sort of.
Well,
yeah.
he's a Democrat. He has lots of left-leaning policies, and I don't agree with everything that he says either. But generally speaking, I appreciate his message, and that's why, like, I think it's really important to not say I'm a Republican, because I'm not a
Exactly.
Republican,
You're right.
and I know a lot of people that are Republican, vote Republican, that wouldn't consider themselves to be that. They'll say I'm a libertarian, I'm a conservative, or I'm right-leaning, or whatever. So I think that the Republican Party and just politics in general is just a filthy game. And all the term limits and the stock trading rules and all that, we're asking people to regulate themselves. It's no surprise that they don't.
Yeah.
And even though the right may be more virtuous 99 times out of 100, they still do lots of bad things also, unfortunately.
Like maybe there's rumors allegedly that 9/11 specifically, right, was kind of an inside job, right? Allegedly.
I would say definitely.
Right? The demolition that went down and the money that was made, and
Yep.
right. I think Cheney and Bush owned the company that serviced the military during that time
Halliburton.
span. Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
Dick Cheney and Halliburton. Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID contract to rebuild all the stuff overseas that we went and blew up, and yeah.
It seems like every presidential candidate at some point when they attain presidency, they come up with something while they're there that can potentially make them a lucrative amount of money, right? Like some people are saying that Obamacare gave a lot of incentives or kickbacks to Obama during his time, right? Again, the Bush situation that went down, and it just seems like there's always like this big bill that they pass that favors them in some way financially. Have you ever noticed that?
Yeah. Well, I think that, money and power, like the money runs the world ultimately.
Mhm.
And the reason why any of them even get into office usually is because people finance them to be there. They're just the front man, and the politicians get swapped in and out. At least the vast majority of them do, but the people that finance them don't. So it's like, this system is certainly very corrupted and corruptible, and there's certainly lots of bad actors in there because there's a lot of people. There's 400 something members of Congress. There's 102 or whatever, or 100 senators. So there's a lot of bad influence in there, and making it so that all of them would be good is almost like a seemingly impossible task. We just have to do the best that we can to like generally get it moving in the right direction, and hopefully encourage the next generation of people to be honest and be the man in the arena and participate in politics. And I think that there's a lot of people that maybe started as what you would consider to be an outsider, not a political person, not a person that's been, that's a servant of their masters. But in order for them to get there, they had to do some favors one way or another, because that's just how the system is set up.
Now they're in debt.
Yeah. So it's like the system in and of itself, much like life, is like always going to be imperfect and unfair in some way or another. But what I worry about the most is like, if we look at it from the 10,000 foot view and say, look, there's all these problems, it's like a seemingly unconquerable task. Whereas if you look at it as like, if I can't convince you to not let a dude swim in a women's, I'm never going to convince you to get up to the top. So I try to focus on all those things where we really could make a change and talk about those things, because the corrupt pieces at the top will never get there unless we take out all the low level people first. And by take out, I mean remove from office, not take
Thank you
out.
for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Right.
Flag.
Right. Yeah. Let me ask you another question. You mentioned something about the next generation, right? You know what's crazy is I kind of been looking into both sides, and it looks like the conservative side or the right side has a good bullpen kind of coming up, you know, like the Tulsi Gabbards of the world, the JD Vances of the world. And then on the other side, you really don't see much going on. I actually even believe that Charlie Kirk should run for office at some point, maybe even Candace Owens, you know what I mean? Right. Have you noticed that one side does kind of have a stable that's coming up in the minor leagues, and then the other side is completely like they're done. Like there's nobody on the other side that's even like who's going to run in, 2028, you know what I mean? Like, have you noticed that shortage on that side?
Yes, but I will say this, that all those people that you named, they're independent thinkers that have very specific ideas that in sometimes are very incongruent with even the people around them. And a lot of people will disagree with them, but we generally believe in them and their honesty, and that they are willing to stand behind their convictions. Candace Owens is a perfect example of that. A lot of people on the right don't agree with Candace Owens on one topic or the next, which in my opinion, and likely both of yours, is a good thing. On the left, it's like never underestimate a party that is willing to lie to you about anything and everything and basically do demonry, to just find a person that fits a mold that's palatable by the people and then thrust them into something that they have no business being.
Well, didn't that just happen?
Look at Kamala Harris. It's like you don't even need to be good. You don't even need to have thoughts. You don't even need to have a policy position. And in fact, you don't even need to get primary votes. So it's like they don't have a stable because they don't need a stable.
That's right.
It doesn't matter to them. They don't have to have.
They're such a well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah, because they can make you believe it, because they're dealing with a lot of people that are driven by emotion and vibes and feelings, as opposed to factual consistency and independent thought over time. It's like what did Kamala? So you're saying that Kamala Harris, because she was a prosecutor, somehow is qualified? Does anybody know any of the cases that she prosecuted? Has anybody even looked into her prosecutorial record? Because I started looking into it the other day, and it doesn't seem all that great. So it's like you use this as a thing to say how she's so qualified, yet no one looks into why. It's like saying like, oh, I worked at Google. It's like, well, they worked at Google. It's like, yeah, you were the janitor at Google, but they don't ask you what she did there. So they're like, yeah, worked at Google. So like, that's the type of thing where it's like, if you have all these people that can be easily persuaded by groupthink, they don't need to have anybody in the stable.
They just need 500 million.
Yeah, they just need to find a they them that looks the right part at the right time. It needs to be, a third Asian, a third Latin American, a third Black, and then another third Indian or whatever. And it needs to be a they them that also has one leg and got in some and had some strange thing happen in the past. This is the perfect person for this job. This is all of America in one person. They'll find a person that will fit that mold no matter what.
I remember paying attention to Hollywood and movies like a little bit later, right? So I'm a big movie guy. In the movies in the 80s and 90s, like all the villains were either Russian or Arab.
Yeah.
Or it was a black guy.
Mm-hmm.
So black guys were always criminals or anything. Well, who casted these people? Like Republicans don't make movies. They don't control Hollywood. So the left made these movies. They brainwashed society into thinking black guy, drug dealer, Russian, enemy, Arab, bomb. So they programmed these thoughts into people, and then like wizardry, they just switch it and be like, it's them that they're racist. We need to change. We are going to change from now on. We're going to have diversity. We're like, well, you should have had diversity at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like you're the one that created the problem, and now they're fixing the problem and blaming the other side for the problem. And nobody questions it. They just fall in line. Yeah, they're right. And
yep.
That to me was a huge wake up call for me of like, there is no way of fighting against that. The machine is too big. The music industry, the movie industry, you're just not going to win that fight.
Yeah, like I saw this thing the other day where it talked about how, I believe it was on Daily Wire, where they talked about how China has a huge control of the movie ticket sales and it's a huge market for American produced movies. And there was some movie that came out, a big blockbuster movie that came out, I think it was a couple years ago, and the bad or the enemy or whatever in that particular movie was someone that China didn't want to be the enemy in that movie. So they made them change who the enemy was and make it a different type, like make it somebody that was Arab or make it an Indian country. Otherwise, we won't show your movies in Chinese theaters. So all your box office, if you make 500 million in the US and 500 million in China, we're going to cut you off from being able to display this movie here and buy this movie here. So Hollywood is like, okay. So they take that and they say, oh, the enemy is Russia now. The enemy is whomever else they want to. So that's the level of influence that exists. And those types of deals are happening everywhere at every level. That's just one of many, many examples.
Unless you're Mel Gibson and you don't care.
Right.
Right.
And then they remove
Destroy
you.
your career.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They completely just destroy you.
Yes.
So I saw a recent interview by Tulsi Gabbard, who I'm becoming a pretty big fan of.
Yeah.
I really am. They asked her, they said, hey, who's been running the country the last 4 years? Because we all know that Joey B just really wasn't all there the last 4 years. I don't know what happened, right? At some point he might have been, and then all of a sudden, like, he was just like completely blank, right?
Mm-hmm.
She said that she called it the cabal. You ever heard of that, right?
Oh, 100%.
A cabal is like a group of special interest people,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Fall of Cabal.
What did you say?
Fall of Cabal.
Yeah. So what
You ever
exactly?
heard of
I haven't. So you got
I want to write that one down.
Yeah, you got to start sending me stuff. What do you think of that statement of saying that the cabal runs, which means like a special group of people? In this case, it may be, deeply rooted old school politicians that have been there for a while, right?
I would say it's not even politicians. I think that the simplest way of explaining this is that the entire planet is run by like an international banking cartel that knows no country as home. And they are moving money around the entire planet, the financiers of the world. I don't want to say his name, but there was a famous person that most people would consider to be in the aforementioned cabal, where he basically said, like, I care not what political party runs a country. I care who controls its money. So it's like, if you have control of the money, where the money flows, you essentially have more power than even the politicians themselves. The politicians get swapped in and out. Who runs the banks? Who owns the banks? Who owns all of the really expensive assets? Who owns the building that the UN is in? Who owns all of these other things? Who's the one that's doing this? Because remember, the United States, the United States government borrows money. Who's it borrowing money from? It's paying interest, right? So the point is that the banking cartel is who really runs the world. All of their tentacles that reach out in any respective industry, that's who's in control of the world. The president of the United States is not, by any stretch of the imagination. They can influence specific policy decisions that relate to your everyday American here and now. But as far as changing the system globally as a whole, that is way, way, way even out of control of the U.S. president. And I think that that's the real cabal. The people that don't have a Wikipedia page, or you go to the Wikipedia page and it just says how they have some bank, and then you go back through their family tree and it's 1,000 years ago. Here's their great grandfather with like a golden with like a diamond amulet that's like worth more than the entire state of Arizona. It's like, and they had that 1,000 years ago, and it's just been. It's like, how do you touch power like that? It's like, think about like the royal family in the UK. They're like, oh, they don't have that much power. They're just there as like a figurehead. The parliament has the power. And it's like, okay, yeah, the guy with the castle and the family and all that. Yeah, they don't have any power.
They have no influence.
They hide in plain sight. So that's who's really in control. Them just being one in a huge faction of people. So that's the real cabal, I think.
Let's talk a little conspiracy. And this is all just
We haven't been doing that
allegedly. No.
This is all true.
Do you remember, we'll mention it, Kanye. Do you remember what happened with him?
Yeah.
Overnight, the guy lost like 100 mil or something at Chase. Overnight, they just like, oh, you want to say that? Here you go. Boom. Right.
Yeah.
It's
Debanked. Yeah.
What'd you say?
Debanked.
Debanked. Yeah. It appears that he's been MIA now for a little while. What's going on with him? Because he kind of like appears and he goes hard, and then he goes away for a year or 2 or 3, comes back richer. They like completely deplete him of everything, and then he'll create like those shoes that he's wearing, the Yeezys, and then he'll come back and just, he's a billionaire again, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think happened to him?
Well, I've heard a lot of different stories about him, and I'm not as much of a yay historian as a lot of other people are. But I will say that, the reason why the cabal passed down to the government, passed down, whatever, the powers that be, the reason why they want celebrities is because celebrities have an outsized amount of influence over the way that people think.
Mm-hmm.
Like Taylor Swift, to use her, she's a cultural example right now. It's like Taylor Swift represents a threat because if she comes out and says this, people could start looking into that thing.
Right. Regardless if it's true or not.
Right. Yeah. Like they can have, like, I remember a long time ago, I said to somebody, think about how much power Mark Zuckerberg has if you're on Facebook every day.
Jeez.
There's nothing illegal. If every device that had Facebook, if you went to facebook.com and they just made the homepage something, this thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
The entire planet would know it like that, right? Because everyone's there. They could send if
there's hundreds of millions of people on Meta.
Billion.
Yes. Yeah.
So billions.
Yeah.
So if every Android device or if every Apple device, if they were to send a push notification that says this thing just happened, you could change the entire world like that, right?
Instantly, right.
So this is like an outsized amount of power. 30 years ago, the only people that had that degree of power really were like celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like these people represent a threat. So you need to get that threat in your respective stable. And if they don't stay in the stable that you need them to be in, then they must be destroyed.
Mm.
So that's the story of Kanye, in my opinion, is like, if he doesn't fit into one of the respective boxes, the yin and yang of the bad versus, whatever you want to say, the yin and yang of life, the yin and yang of the cabal, because it's not just one, it's probably multiple. It's like, if you don't fit into any respective box and you have an outsized amount of power, you must be destroyed, or your character must be destroyed. And I think that that's what they did to him and so many other people.
Let me ask you this. Is it true, right, that allegedly the Democratic Party has been busing people to the rallies?
Yeah. That seems to be, I mean, I can't validate it myself personally.
There's been pictures and videos of buses and attendees coming out of those buses, right, wearing the Harris shirts.
Yep.
What's going on?
I would say this. If two people are in a room by themselves and one of them murders the other person and no one saw it, did they murder them? How do you determine whether or not they murdered that person? You have eyewitness testimony. You have
forensic
motive,
evidence.
you have intent, you have opportunity, right? The same way you would solve a crime. So it's like, if I look at the busing situation and any of these other issues, it's like, I didn't see you shoot them, but I have all this evidence that shows intent, it shows motive, it shows opportunity. So yeah, I've seen people say that they've been getting bussed. I've seen different evidence that's been found online. You see people getting out of buses. Yeah. So like, it certainly seems that way. Yeah. If it was a court of law and I was the, judge and jury, I would say, yeah, for sure. So, but at the same time, it's like they intentionally try to hide because who would have pointed that out 30 years ago? A journalist. Mm-hmm. But now if a journalist says that now, where do you go? You can only go to Fox. Oh, Fox is biased. Mm-hmm. Oh, where else are you going to go? Newsmax? Oh, no one watches Newsmax. I mean, they do, but you understand what I'm saying. If you can't get it into their machine where they distribute it, then it just is like, oh, that's just a theory.
It didn't really happen.
And it goes away, yeah.
Right.
So like that's a small piece, but like that certainly seems highly probable, if not nearly certain to me, that they have been doing that. Busing people from one place to the next, yes. I would say almost for sure.
99% maybe?
I would say, yeah, probably. Yeah.
There's also rumors out there that allegedly some of these attendees were being hired and paid to be there.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Because let's use the example of the buses and then we'll get to that one. It's like, you're not busing everybody there, but maybe you're making a bus available to move them from this region to this region That's busing. Maybe not everybody, but it's like, are that many people in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or whatever is the location? No, but if you get all of the respective places to say, hey, we're going to give you a meal, we're going to give you a bus trip, you're supporting the cause, you're helping America, hop on this bus. How do we fill this stadium up? For sure, for optics, for marketing, they have money, so that's highly probable. As far as paying people to be there, you could pay someone to be somewhere without paying them to be somewhere. You could say, hey, we're going to give you some press hits. We're going to make sure that you get press hits on NBC. You're an attendee. We're going to let you film TikToks with the president. We're going to let you meet Kamala Harris and do a TikTok video with her or something like that. You can incentivize somebody and pay them without paying them. So I would say that, yeah, there's a lot of coercion that's not only financial, but beneficial in a multitude of other ways. Like there's this one TikTok creator that I'm not going to name because I don't want to give him any more gas than he already has. This guy had like 500,000 followers on TikTok. He's making videos with Obama. He's like literally shooting his video and then Obama pops up. Hey, how you going? It's like, think about how much more viral.
Is he a Mexican dude?
No.
Okay.
So think about how many more people are going to watch this clip as a result of Obama being in the clip. So if you have 500,000, if you pick up 100,000 followers by having a spot with Obama, then they could just do that to a lot of TikTok creators. It gives them a bunch of gas. Maybe they pay for their bus to get there, give them a food stipend or something. And then they get this clip with Obama. Now their social media grows. Now they become more of an influencer voice and they just did you a favor. Hey, would you mind talking about this? No pressure. We're not paying, but we're giving you access to the ability to raise your stock.
Yeah,
we're going to make sure that we talk. I know people at MSNBC. We're going to get you on the next social media Gen Z panel on MSNBC, and that's going to get you more followers. And then you're going to be able to monetize your TikTok videos more. You're going to financially benefit from this. You're going to socially benefit from this. We're going to give you access to people. I don't have to pay you to get you to do something.
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Right.
So they are doing that, which is tactically, strategically smart.
Yeah. I actually have a friend. I'll name him on the show, Carlos Eduardo Espina, who I've actually attended a soccer game with, right? And he actually spoke at the DNC. He spoke at the DNC. He's been to the White House several times. He's been around Joey B. and he's been around Obama.
Yep.
I'm like, dude, what's going on here, right? Just a few years ago when you and I were hanging out at the soccer game, you weren't even involved. But he has a major influence over the Latino community. And there are rumors out there that the White House, specifically this administration, brought in a bunch of TikTok or social media influencers to meet with the administration.
Yes.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah. I mean, that specific one, yes, they've done this with but here's the thing about it is that this is strategically actually correct. And people do this with any multitude of different things. Like, for example, let's say that you have a real estate event and there's some local real estate guy. You're saying, hey, we're going to give you a couple seats to the event. Just post about it on your TikTok. Now, the next real estate event that you do in that region, it helps your business grow. This is how any business would market itself. The thing that sucks about it is that it seems nefarious because they're pushing ideologies that we generally believe to be, anti what we believe in and negative for the country, but they're doing essentially what any normal other business would do. There's just this other piece of it that's so dark, which is why we are mad about it. The reality of it is that the right should be doing the same thing. And I wish they were better.
We're not really good at
not good at marketing and
they're
branding.
Not good at marketing and branding and promotion, right? We're not very creative. We're old school, right? So, what's up with Megan Thee Stallion?
Megan the horse, I call her. Yeah.
Yeah. What's going on? I guess she's all of a sudden she's involved in the political realm. So is Plies. I saw the reaction video you did to Plies. That was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, okay. Again, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, Megan Thee Stallion. Well, who writes her checks? A big
music
Universal Music Group or whatever, right? So if Universal Music Group says you're going to be at the Harris rally and we're going to sell a lot more records, she wants to sell records.
Well, and they probably paid her too.
Sure. They want to sell records.
Yeah.
Hey, you do this spot with Kamala Harris, you get behind Kamala Harris, you become an outspoken voice for Kamala Harris, you're going to get the next L'Oreal commercial, you're going to get the next Pepsi commercial, because all these people are all working and intertwined. She's on a Pepsi commercial. Then what's next? She'll perform at the Super Bowl. And it's like, who controls the Super Bowl? Who picks the talent at the Super Bowl? Jay-Z. Jay-Z is linked in with the Diddler. Like, they're all connected. So I would say that a lot of the celebrities are doing it for financial benefit. Certainly on the left, I think they're doing it for financial benefit and opportunity benefit. That maybe they agree with it kind of, but they know that it will financially benefit them to be on that side and be outspoken. Therefore, they're there. Like, would I have ever even thought about Plies? Of course not. Like, I'm certainly not listening.
But
to
all of a sudden, he's politically involved.
Yeah, he's got millions of followers. So it's like, if they see Plies,
His music is so bad.
yeah. So if they see him talking about it, it's like, here's a guy that used to be very relevant. That's not really as relevant.
Was he ever
I
really
guess.
relevant? Plies?
Not to me, but he certainly was.
What
at
were
some
some of
point.
his hit songs?
I don't know, but that doesn't mean that he's not. I don't know any Megan the Horse songs either, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't relevant at some point. The point is that like somebody like Plies, if you're going down in your attention, the attention is no longer feeding your way. If you find a way to jump on what believes to be a popular and winning train, and you know that they will gas you up, thanks Plies, come to the DNC. Like, you're financially to benefit as a result, and you're socially to benefit as a result as well. So I think a lot of them, they feel a little bit that it's the right thing, but really they want the money.
Isn't that a bribe?
Yes. Well, think about this. Think about like, what is lobbying?
Yeah, exactly.
There's all this money spent on lobbying. What is lobbying?
Persuasion. Yeah.
Oh, you're my
illegal.
Friend.
Yeah.
Let's go to dinner. Oh,
You need a little bit for your campaign. Here you go. Right.
Yeah, right. Like if you wanted to lobby me to maybe talk about your business, you wouldn't have to say, how much do I have to pay you to talk about my business? You just take me on the boat and bring me to the thing. And I gotta watch.
We never
some-
talked about it.
Right.
I never told him anything.
You can coerce without, and like, think about like the mob, for example. It's like, how does the mob work? It's like, I don't need to give you a brick of cash to give you a brick of cash in some other way.
Mhm.
All of our boys are going to buy cars from your dealership. If you
Mhm.
do this, all of our buddies are going to eat at your restaurant, whatever.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is just side note, Megan Thee Stallion didn't have a better song than Body Yaddy 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 to perform at the DNC. Is that, I'm not at the DNC. That was at the rally at Atlanta, right? She really couldn't come. She like, I saw the RNC, right? On the right side, they brought out, cause I'm proud to be, and she's over there like Body Yaddy 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 Yaddy, right? I'm like, dude, what are we doing here? You think that's feeding identity politics? Is that their intention?
I think that a low information voter's vote is just as valuable as a high information.
It counts
voter.
for one.
Right.
It's probably more valuable.
So if I give you, it's equally valuable.
Mhm.
It's 1-to-1. So if I get a person that's 22, that's from Atlanta, that doesn't care much about politics, but they knows there's a Megan the Horse concert for free down at the arena.
Boom.
All I gotta do is show up. Oh, like, yeah, they give you a t-shirt or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I don't really pay attention to politics. Oh, why don't we sign you up to vote right here? Don't you want a 5-year-old girl that gets raped to be able to get an abortion? Well, Donald Trump's against that. Vote for the Democrat. Well, okay, that sounds bad. Or whatever. That's what I'm saying. It's like, you take a low information voter, you get them on a single topic, and you can emotionally convince them to cast that vote. That's all they want.
Done.
They're collecting votes.
Yes,
they don't care about
exactly.
they don't care about how it looks, because again, it's back to the original point, which is like, the right believes it has the best product. We don't need Megan the Horse to shake her ass on stage because we have the right product. They know that the product's garbage, so they put the horse up there, and they're like,
they got to put a lot of money behind that product, right?
And
to get it in everybody's face.
Because they want to win, because it's seized to benefit them if they win. I mean, why does anybody do anything for the most part? It's like, it's all about where the money flows, and they know that the more gas that they can get in that direction, your Megan the Horse album sales are going to go up. All these other people that associate them with the left, they're going to get more opportunities and jobs and whatnot. So it's a lot of it is a money game. A lot of those people that sit in the middle that would otherwise be not involved are willing to go where the cash is at.
Let me ask you, when people say like, oh, my vote doesn't matter. And, a lot of people, you hear that all the time. Oh, my vote doesn't count. My vote doesn't matter. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, if your vote really doesn't matter, then why are they spending so much money trying to get it?
Right. I agree.
Right.
I agree with that. And I think that, them convincing you that the vote doesn't matter would be pretty smart.
Yeah.
They want, and it's like another one of like Trump's foibles. It's like he went on this campaign talking to us about how the votes don't matter, or how they were all taken advantage of. And then he's like, but vote for me this time. And it's like, Like that's why when we went on the topic of the selection in 2020, I'm like, we shouldn't even go there, because anything that discourages a person that's even going to find themselves to this content, if they believe that, well, it was rigged then, why wouldn't it not be rigged now? I'm just not going to.
Why should they even show up?
Then they win.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, maybe it doesn't count. Let's just say that it doesn't. Well, then it certainly would. Let's say the 5% chance that it does. Don't you want to at least? Wouldn't that be enough for you to try?
Exactly.
If it was like even a 5% chance, like, yeah, probably. Otherwise, your daughter is going to be playing basketball and she's going to go in the locker room and there's going to be some dude in there.
And there's going to be something swinging in the locker room.
And it's like, oh, this is Jennifer. He's like, what?
Name used to be Jerry.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Moving on to a lighter note, as we're winding down here. Do you remember that interview that Cat Williams had with what's his name? Shannon Sharp?
Yeah.
Do you remember when he kind of like Nostradamus just what was he predicted that all these things were gonna come to fruition in 2024.
The truth will come out in
right?
2024.
He talked about the diddler. He talked about so many things on that. That was like the fourth quarter of 23. He said 2024 is the year of the truth, right? Have you seen so much of that actually come to fruition? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I love Cat Williams. I think he's probably one of my favorite comedians. I would say certainly in my top 10 favorite comedians. And he represents like a Ye type, like an uncontrollable force where they're like, don't.
That's why they've put him in jail 10 different times.
Well, here's the other problem is like, Cat Williams, an imperfect person. Comedians in general, like they may use drugs. They may have had a checkered past for whatever reason. They may, creative types in general, alcohol or whatever it may be, those things may get exploited. There's a lot of things that Cat Williams has done that have been bad. The unfortunate part is that if you deliver a truthful message, but it's in a vessel that has been tainted, they will always say that these tainted aspects of your life negate the truth of what you're saying, and therefore you shouldn't be paid attention to. And it's like, they're not talking about the substance of what you're saying. They're just saying, well, you got arrested all these times, therefore this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So like, he represents one of very few truth tellers that is in an imperfect vessel that they exploit to pretend like what he's saying is not true. But I think a lot of the stuff that he said is true and has come true and will continue to.
What do you think is going to happen with this diddler situation? What do you think is going to happen?
If I had to guess, I would say that he will.
You think he's going to sing like a bird?
I don't think it will matter.
You think they're going to Epstein him?
Yeah.
You think so? By the way, they denied him bail.
I would say, I don't know, 50-50 on whether or not they do that. I would just say that I bet no one else will get arrested but him. Much like Epstein. Like I remember I made a video a while back that went pretty viral on TikTok where I was like, Epstein is like one of the most notorious criminals to ever exist that went to prison for trafficking girls to no one.
Yeah.
Who did he sell them to? Who else was it? No one else got arrested.
Just him,
like
right?
a couple people, right? But there's obviously more. There's obviously levels to it. There's obviously a lot of depth. Well, how come none of those people got held accountable? The same organizations that only took him down and none of those other people, well, those are the same people that are in control of the Diddler's case. So I would wager that they'll make it seem like he was this one sole actor. Look, we're fighting this type of crime. They'll destroy him. And I bet no one in his inner circle will face any repercussions at all. I think the reason they took him down is because it's like something is a widely known secret until it becomes like a widely known obvious secret. And now you represent a liability to the ability for that stuff to keep going. So they got to get you out of there because all the stuff's going to keep happening. And I would wager that it probably still is. In fact, it definitely still is. It's just not him. Now they're at whoever else's house. So I would say that they're going to take him down, and then whoever assumes whoever becomes the Don of this criminal enterprise. You
think the diddler was the Don?
Well, he represented some aspect of the Don in his respective umbrella. Obviously, I'm sure there's
in the entertainment industry.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah. Let's say rap. Yeah. Let's say rappers. Maybe.
Yeah.
There's obviously people above him, but it's like you take him out. Now somebody else is going to come into place, and they're going to let that person get away with it so long as they do the other favors for them around it.
Line.
Like you don't if you and I and if Cat Williams was on YouTube saying this a year ago, It's like, you don't think the people that are really tuned into this stuff knew about this 5 years ago? Why would you let a guy like that keep doing that? The only reason you would let him keep doing that is if he could lead you to other things that you wanted to take down or other factions that you would want to exploit. And I would say that the same thing probably goes for Jeffrey Epstein. He probably was used to get access to other things or to manipulate or blackmail other people. And then once he became too much of a liability, he gets eliminated and the next person comes up. I think that Diddy just became too much of a liability. So they remove him. Now there's a new person in his place. They're going to let that person get away with it, but also lead me to these other things.
But shouldn't anybody that's watching these things go down, right? Whoever the next Don is in place, shouldn't they know that it's a losing ticket at the end of the day? You know what I mean? At some point, you're gonna get the losing ticket.
Well, I would say that argument could be used for the mafia. It's like if every mafia Don, most of them gets killed or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, who would want to be the Don? It's like, well, some people don't care about tomorrow as much. And if they need to satiate whatever it is that runs their life, like, look, if you're diddling 14-year-old boys, the way that this person thinks about reality is different than the way that you and I,
for sure,
that we think about reality. So you're not dealing with like a rational person. And it's almost like, it's like when someone is like a narcissist, it's like, how could they do that? How could they have no empathy center that they're just a narcissist? Well, you're thinking of it from your perspective because you're not a narcissist.
Yeah.
They would do insane things to satiate whatever it is that they need to do. So it's like, did Jeffrey Epstein think he was going to live 10 years from now? Did he care what happened 10 years from now? No, he wants this kid right now. He wants this power. God. You know what I mean? Okay. So it's like, I would say that like you give somebody, you satiate enough of whatever it is that they need at any given time, they're not so worried about tomorrow. And so I would say that like the fact that it may end up in their own destruction or demise, like I know, like I remember I had a friend years back that like his dad died when he was young. His dad died like in his 30s or 40s. And I remember him saying like, I don't know if I'm going to make it past 40. So I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this. Not that he was doing anything criminal, but he was like, if I make it past 40, I already won.
Yeah.
So it's like the perspective of life for someone like me. My grandfather lived to 95, my grandmother 93, other 96. I believe that I have a lot of life left to live. So I have a lot to look forward to. Somebody like that, it's like, do they even think about 10 years from now? Probably not. I want this boy right now. I want this power and money and I want these models and I want to do whatever I want. And I'm going to pull a gun out or whatever I got to do because this is feeding my demon.
Yeah.
And then when they start getting a little sloppy, get rid of them.
Well, speaking of sloppy, like what's up with the 1,000 bottles of baby oil? Like who needs, I know that the lawyer came out and said, oh, he buys at Costco in bundles or whatever.
Costco said that they don't sell oil in bundles.
That's hilarious.
So what's up with there's rumors out there that that all that baby oil is laced with something else.
That certainly could be true. But here's the thing. It's like, if you watch any HBO show, you watch any Netflix show, you watch any drama saga, it's like, what do they do to the media? They give you the thing that doesn't matter. So you don't think
the baby oil.
So you think about, don't think about the things that do matter.
What about all the other stuff they found? Like the video evidence.
Yeah. It's like, hey, there's 5,000 tapes of him with underage boys and there's 1,000 bottles of baby oil. And it's like, baby oil. It's like, so, I mean, I think as individuals, we tend to underestimate the level of demonry that a group of people with the same interests are willing to go to deceive people off the trail. They're like, look at this guy over here. And then it's like, getting somebody to rob you, like, getting somebody to break in your front door while I move everything out the back. So it's like the baby oil is probably the least salacious detail of all, but they're going to give us that. So we don't think about all the other stuff.
Well, I know the baby oil was a fact because there's pictures and evidence everywhere. What about the 754 dildos that supposedly were found? Do you think is that facts? Because I mean, there's reports and then there's, they're debunking those reports.
He's not sponsoring.
Was there 754 dildos at his residence?
754 of anything is just hilarious. Like, I don't care what you had. Like, if you had 754 moon pies, I'd be like, you're insane. You're a psycho.
Yeah.
I think that it's highly probable, but this is the one thing that I try not to do when I talk on my own channel. Is like, if I can't validate it, I try to focus on the things that I can validate.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, could there have been 750 dildos? Yeah, probably. Could there have been the baby oil? Yeah, probably. The pictures, sure. But it's like, here's all this footage going back 10 years of him saying stuff you watch his face say it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're a person with discernment, you're like, that's kind of sketchy. So like, these are provable, you know what I mean? It's like, these are objective, provable things that everyone can see, everyone can understand. The dildos may or may not, but this is real. And I try to focus my attention there when I push information out, because I think that that's more valuable. Because if it turns out that the dildos weren't there, then it's like, well, then we talked about nothing.
Yeah.
Then the whole thing's gone, right?
Yeah. What do you see going down this year? Because so my wife, she's a very, very old school conservative, just like myself. We have that type of upbringing, naturally, by the way, just in case there's any like Latinos out there listening, which there are, I'm sure. Right. We naturally are conservative in our upbringing. We believe in God, we believe in family, we believe in hard work, we're old school values, you know what I mean? We were very certain that this election was definitely like, we had it in the bag on the conservative side.
Yeah.
It looks like the tables have slowly transitioned into like, we don't know what's going to happen now. What do you see play out this year?
Well, again, I think that it's important to remember, two things can be true at the same time. One, remember, where do we see Kamala Harris being popular? We see her on all the channels that we just mentioned are controlled, that they're influencing what we see by choosing for us to see it. They buy the billboard, they buy the commercial spot, they make sure that it's floating on social media. They get all the influencers to push it. It certainly seems like there's lots of gas. They want you to believe that there is, much like they did with Hillary Clinton. So that is where I think a lot, it seems like she's neck and neck with him because of all of those reasons. But I would say that I don't meet that many people that are that gung-ho for her as I do for Donnie. But on the flip side of that, I never been more sure that Trump would win an election than I was in 2020.
Same.
I was like, I'll bet my
Same.
bottom dollar that this dude's going to win. Like, you drive down the street and you're like, I haven't seen a Biden sign. I haven't seen a Biden
He
rally.
didn't even run. He was just in his basement.
Right. So here's another really important point. You never saw Biden at rallies, right? So you're like, oh, he had no attention. And we to this day reference that. So what do? Create rallies for her, right? It's like, it's optics. The optics of it are in their best interest. So
Propaganda.
So if we got to bust people in to make it look like she's got people in every city, great. If you think that it's hype, and remember what we were talking about offline before, it's like the tribalism. It's like nobody wants to be where nobody wants to be. If you see that hundreds of thousands of people are suddenly for her, and you think that you don't like Trump's face, you're like, well, how could all these people be wrong? You can be influenced subconsciously by wanting to be part of the winning team. And that's the message that they're trying to sell us. And that's why they're not letting her get in front of cameras. That's why they're not letting her get off script, because they know that it's only downside. They just have to make her look like everybody loves her. And her getting in front of a camera can only jeopardize that. So that's what they're doing. As far as what's going to happen next, I don't know. If I had to bet, I would say that I hope Trump wins. I think he will win. I think we're in tough shape if he doesn't. But to me, it's like anybody's game at this point, because remember, it's like how many legal things have changed between 2020 and 2024 as far as the actual voting is concerned. How many people voted for Biden that just hated Trump? So it's like, if they're voting anti-Trump, would they vote for her to be anti-Trump again? Probably. So they don't even have to like her. They just have to hate him. And I think that we can't underestimate how powerful that hatred is. Partly because of indoctrination, and partly because he doesn't do himself a lot of favors to people that are sitting in the middle that are like, I like Taylor Swift and he says I hate Taylor Swift. Screw this guy. So it's anybody's toss. I hope that he wins. I think he will win, but I really don't know.
What's next for Bobby Sauce?
I think that I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. I think that it's beneficial. I think that it's positive. I think that it's working, and I do it because I enjoy doing it, and I think that it's purposeful, even if it influences only a small number of people. When my account started to stagnate, probably like 8 months ago during the primaries, because I was saying that I thought DeSantis was good, it was very discouraging. And I realized that I need to frame this not in a way where it's like I only follow what the numbers tell me. It's like, I just have to say what I enjoy. I have to have a good time with it. I have to believe that it's doing the right thing. And if I'm doing the right thing and I'm enjoying it and I do it consistently over time, it will work. So I'm going to keep making videos. I'm going to keep growing my internet businesses. I'm going to keep trying to be a good person. I'm going to try to get smarter and healthier and sharper and be a better force for good in the world. And whatever comes as a result of that will come. I'd love to do more speaking events. I've done some stand-up comedy shows. I did about 14 of those. I would love to get on stages and behind a mic as much as I possibly can. I love doing things like this, talking in long form, and I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing and trying to grow it.
Beautiful, brother. Where can people find you?
BobbySauce.com.
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 What about the IG handle?
Yeah, Take Naps on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, X, and all of the places. But you can go to BobbySauce.com. All my links are there.
Beautiful. Brother, thank you so much for being on the show. And man, let's do this again.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. I hope somebody got something from it. That's
absolutely.
If one person says one thing to one person, we don't know how far it could go. So that's what we're doing here.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up today's show. And if you really enjoyed our conversation today and all the insight that was given today, do me a huge favor. Share the channel. We grow thanks to you. And we love to interact with you, by the way. So comment, like, and tune in for the next one next week. See you soon.